One thing I have been noticing lately is the large increase of games from the East appearing on Steam, specifically appearing as early access titles. Honestly, it's been great to experience titles from different parts of the world. Today's title is brought to you by a Chinese independent studio called Wildfire Game, and the game in question is called Eastern Exorcist. Eastern Exorcist is a side-scrolling action RPG set in an Eastern fantasy world. You take on the role of an exorcist whose role is to rid the world of its demons. A pretty interesting premise. Can our Eastern brethren provide us with an awesome title? So the first thing that you'll notice is the hand-drawn Chinese art that's used in this game, and honestly, the environments look absolutely freaking gorgeous. It's the highlight of the game for me, especially the use of colors for them. The characters themselves, they're alright, but the animation is really my problem with the character models. It's far from smooth outside of your main character. You'll also be introduced to a tutorial, and it does a great job of explaining the different mechanics, the controls, and even later on when you're going through the game, it'll remind you of mechanics that you've learned before, which honestly, I complain that sometimes games leave you, especially early access games, leave you to figure out things on your own a little too much. Here it's the other side of the coin. The reminders can be a bit excessive. And I also recommend that you play with a controller. Honestly, I think most side scrollers, to me personally, feel much more natural with the controller in hand, so I would definitely recommend that you do that. So I'm going to get into the combat, and it's easy to learn but very hard to master. You use a sword to attack, and you have various attacks. You have normal attacks, charge attacks, jump attacks, etc, etc. Lots to discover and a lot of ways to take out your enemies. And I also would recommend that you master both the dodge and the parry. It is vital, especially against certain bosses. The dodge is easy to pull off, you just press a button. But parrying is very hard to pull off, but incredibly satisfying when you do it, especially against the boss. The problem is the window of opportunity is a bit too small for my liking. I wish it was a bit larger and allowed more room for error. All these things that you can do outside of parrying is limited by your stamina, which unfortunately takes a long time to generate. But I found out that, defeating most enemies, when you dispel them, it helps regenerate your stamina a little bit, and also parrying is a good alternative to dodging to regenerate stamina. So you just have to approach the game a little bit different and be a little more methodical with your approach. The RPG elements here are unfortunately on the lighter side. You basically level yourself up with the power you collect, and you go to the shrines and level up there. And leveling up increases your health and your attack damage. The cap is at 30, which honestly you'll most likely reach that by the game's end. I reached that, and I had still quite a few bosses left before the end of the game. I just wish that the cap was a bit higher, just because once you level up you'll have a lot of excess power that you may not know what to do with. You can also gain active abilities known as exorcism arts, and each provides its own different functions. Most of these, when you get them at first, are very weak, but they definitely get strong as you invest into their skill tree, which is what you'll most likely use the excess power for, and even that you'll still have more power left over. There's a good amount to choose from here, but I honestly ended up sticking with one known as the Imperial Sword spell. Basically, it shoots swords towards the enemy as you dodge, and you can level it up to throw even more swords, and when you fill it up you can cast your own swords as well. It honestly was very powerful and made a lot of fights almost trivial, so I never felt the need to switch to another one. Now, I've mentioned the bosses before, and that's because that's really the meat of the game, and it will take most of your time. I mean, there are normal enemies between them, but it basically is a boss rush for the most part. Skills, like I mentioned before, such as dodging and especially parrying, are put to the test here and are vital for many of them. When you face these bosses, most of them, you have to break a shield before you do any real damage to them. My issue with the bosses that I have, there are some good ones, there are some bad ones, there's a mix of quality for them. But man, the difficulty's all over the place. I mean, one boss can be way too easy, and then the next boss will be frustratingly difficult, and then the cycle just repeats again. So there's just no real curve to the difficulty, just a ton of spikes, and it feels really unbalanced. So every time you do beat a boss, you unlock a challenge series to play, and basically you can use that to get more power and soul essence. It's basically a stronger, more powerful variant of the boss, and this is also accessed at the shrines. Most of these are very challenging, but worth it if you're trying to max out faster or just trying to level up your skills much quicker. Like every side scroller, platforming of some kind will be present. You have your double jump and the dodge, which is vital to get through these sections. I'm not really the biggest platforming fan, but the controls are very well enough. I never felt it never feels slippery or anything like that. However, it's hard to sometimes tell what it's okay to land on. Sometimes you'll see something and think you can land on it, it'll be fine, you'll end up going through, or you'll just miss it because you're on the edge of it or not close enough to the edge. It can be frustrating, especially for someone who's not the best at these. So the game is very linear, but there are some side quests to pursue early on, but nothing too crazy. Most are related to the main quest in some way anyways, so it's not really something that'll be too much out of your way. It's just, you know, like I said, it's very linear and doesn't really offer too much room for deviation. So I was actually curious to see how the story was going to be told for this one, and it's told through various NPC interactions and cutscenes, and they're all fully voiced, which is impressive for an indie developer. The voice acting is also all in Chinese, and it honestly feels more authentic this way. Unfortunately, the voice acting, the sound quality is noticeably inconsistent. Some people sound like they're recording in a studio. Other people sounds like they're recording in their mom's basement. I get it. It's probably a budget thing, space thing, you know. So I understand. The cutscenes also show off the great artwork as well, which is always a plus. And the story is overall good from you know what I've played through, easy to comprehend and pretty cool. You know, you definitely like the protagonist, and you'd like to see where things end up. And there were also some several twists and turns that I honestly didn't expect. Some worked better than others. Now, unfortunately, the game is very short. It's only a few hours long, but it does have some extra content to play around with. You have New Game Plus, and you also have a trial mode, which is basically a more of a pure boss rush mode. The credits hinted that there was going to be more to come in terms of content. It looks like that's what they were trying to hint, maybe a new story, who knows. But honestly, the game hasn't really been updated since 2020, so I'm not really sure if it's been abandoned or not. To be fair, it is a bug-free experience, so I haven't like run into any bugs and stuff like that, and the game doesn't leave off on a cliffhanger or anything like that. Story-wise, everything wraps up, but content-wise, doesn't look like there's much here. So overall, if you like what you see here, I can give a cautious recommend. I think what's here is solid enough to get most people, if this is what you enjoy. If you're looking for a linear platformer and you like your side scrollers, you will have a good time with this. I am sure of it for the most part. But if you're looking for something a little bit deeper, or hoping that there's more coming in the future, unfortunately, I would say hard pass on this one, which is the camp that I am on. Because as good as the game is, like, polished, and as much fun as I had, it's over before you know it. You know, it ends. It's a very short game, not a lot of content, so you know there's only so much you can get with this game replay wise. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Hope everyone's staying safe, hope everyone is doing well, and this is Powerhouse signing off.